Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Still with you and today's edition of The Breakfast Show. And of course, this month Egypt is awaiting a major economic event which will be held from the 23rd till the 25th of October, which is the Egypt 2022 Economic Conference, based on the directives of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, with the participation of all spectrums of society, from experts and specialists, to formulate clear visions for the future of the Egyptian economy. Of course, this is a very important conference which will be also discussing means of enhancing partnerships between the public and private sectors on the ground. And we're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest for this morning, Dr. Yomn Hamaki, Professor of Economics. Dr. Yomn, it's a very good morning to you, ma'am.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us, Doctor. And let me start by asking you, what do you see the main objective of the economic conference, which is to be held on October the 23rd?
Actually, the main goal is to design a roadmap for the coming near future, the short-term future,
yes,
regarding how to address, the challenges confronting the Egyptian economy. We witnessed for the last period that Egypt has succeeded to achieve a successful economic reform 2016,
yes,
and we were about actually to achieve a rate of growth arrived to 6%. Unfortunately, we have been affected seriously by two, shocks that are COVID-19, and then after that, the Russian-Ukrainian war.
yes,
And this affected seriously the performance of the Egyptian economy and elaborated, the main challenges confronting how Egypt can address, the economic challenges like unemployment, like poverty, like, the shortage specifically of foreign currency. We have a problem regarding that since we haven't developed our, productive basis in a good way,
yes,
which means that we have the main structures like the industrial, the information technology, the agriculture sector, in which we witnessed, a rate of growth that are not quite, coincide with the requirement of the labor force and, the needs to achieve a better economic growth. And from here it comes that the participation of the industrial sector to generate GDP hasn't exceeded from 14 to 16%, and this is minimal. The participation of the private sector, which is
yes,
the core of this discussions and the main goal of the conference, is to how to increase the participation of the private sector,
yes,
since this participation has witnessed severe decrease the last period.
Yes, Doctor, that leads me to my next question. The Prime Minister was saying that the conference will discuss, the means of enhancing partnership between the public and the private sectors on the ground. How important do you see this partnership, and what does the private sector bring in with this partnership?
This is very important, and starting with we have witnessed during the last period several meetings that have been done. And actually yesterday there was a very important meeting
yes,
presided by our president,
yes,
in order to discuss
with investors
all the obstacles. This is expressing to large extent the political will that Egypt nowadays is actually persistent in the participation of the private sector and how to enhance the role of the private sector, because for any economy actually the private sector should lead economic growth. And from here it comes that we need to address all obstacles confronting the private sector, and there are a lot, and we kept saying to large extent that we are facing challenges regarding bureaucracy, regarding corruption, regarding, procedures for customs, for taxation, unavailability of skilled labor force. Can be regarded as a very important obstacle confronting the private sector. So all these are quite important. And if you look to the agenda of the conference, you can see that it is divided into the first part, how to achieve a macroeconomic stabilization, because you cannot, proceed in any economic growth without
this
macroeconomic stabilization. And here we have to refer to, the fiscal and monetary policies, a very important role for the central bank, not only by, the monetary policy, how to enhance the efficiency of monetary policy regarding exchange rate, flexibility and interest rate, but besides fiscal policies and the coordination between the two policies. So on, at the same time, we have to address the burden of debt. We have, we have a high burden of debt, internal and external debt. So this can be considered as challenges for macroeconomic stabilization. And from here it comes that all these topics are going to be discussed. What are the policies required in order to enhance the capability of the economy, because Egypt actually is a land full of opportunities.
Absolutely.
Frankly speaking, and after the mega project, you have a lot of potentialities for profitable projects that can be done in different areas.
Absolutely. Dr. Yomn, speaking about participants and potential, we're speaking about over 1,000 specialized economic participants who will be taking part in this conference. How do you see the importance of their participation, and how important is it for different groups and organizations and parties to the economic development to sit down and meet and further discussions in this field?
Actually, this is a very important message that we cannot achieve economic growth without the coordination and cooperation among all partners, which means that the government cannot do the work only, but we need a cooperation and coordination with the private sector, civil society, different organizations, and from here it comes that this gathering is hoping to, take all the point of views regarding what are the obstacles preventing all these players to coordinate their efforts, because actually we know all the problems of Egypt. We know how to be solved. It is quite clear for several years, what are the requirements for economic growth in Egypt. The problem is how to implement this, vision or strategy. And when we talk about how to implement, you are going to talk about roles and responsibilities. Roles and responsibilities are not for the government, despite that the government is assuming a burden, a very high and important responsibility, since, the government...
it's the leadership role, yes.
Yes, the government, employee are representing a very important obstacle for the private sector. When you hear, the obstacles that are preventing actually businessmen and women from, the expanding their, investment. You are going to find this bureaucracy is on the top of the challenges. From here it comes that we need to address these challenges, how to be solved, how, how to, find some kind of compromise about a monitoring and evaluation system in order to see to how extent these policies are going to be implemented in reality. And this is quite important, because we always kept designing strategies without following to how extent these strategies are implemented in reality.
Indeed. Indeed. Dr. Yomn, you mentioned a very important issue, which is that of monetary and fiscal policy. And there's also the flip side, or another side to that, which is the proposals, as the Prime Minister said, to formulate clear measures and policies that can contribute as well to increasing the competitiveness and the flexibility of the Egyptian economy. How important is this part of the meeting?
Actually, this is the main part
Yes.
of what we are going to discuss. You know, the competitiveness of the Egyptian economy
Yes.
can be, you know, tested when we see our exports, when we see the number of tourists we are able to attract. You know, we are not achieving, compared to competitors in the world, you know, we are not achieving the right, you know, results that should be achieved. So for the number of tourists, we have everything you can imagine in Egypt. All types of tourists, but, you know, the size and the quality of tourists still, you know, quite minimal compared to other countries. So we need to address this problem, how to be solved. We need to address the problem of the competitiveness of the industrial sector. Why we haven't succeeded so far to increase our exports in, for example, ready-made clothes, in furniture, in food industries, despite that we are exporting nowadays fruits and vegetables. So why we are not coping that with increasing the size of food industry? So a lot of questions, you know, that we have answers actually for it.
Yes.
But still we need to specify roles and responsibilities why we are not achieving the prospected results, how we can address this problem, who are going to be the players, how to find, how to evaluate the role of each of these players so that we can achieve a better result, inshallah, for the coming future.
Absolutely. Dr. Yomn, also there is a drive to really devise a package of incentives for the industrial sector as well as for exporters as per President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's directives. How important would this be in enabling them to further invest and encourage their investments in Egypt?
This is very important, you know, because we are giving incentives, for example, for exports. From my point of view as economist, and I have been in Shura Council for several years, more than 12 years,
yes.
You know, we have revised these policies and the efficacy of such policies. I don't know that to how extent this can help, but what can help better is to, you know, make an enabling environment for export. Another thing which is for the first time I can hear in Egypt is that there is going to be tax exemption
Yes.
for the local content of the industrial sector. This is quite important, and starting from some industries like electric cars and hydrogen, renewable energy. So specifying such project, I believe that we need to add other, you know, activities that may enhance the production processes and the competitiveness, like, for example, multinational buying groups. If we can encourage multinational buying groups to come to Egypt, like for the ready-made clothes, I know thousands of factories in Egypt that they are producing in a good manner, but they need just, you know, to improve their competitiveness and to upgrade, you know, the quality of production. So for all experiences of the successful experiences like China, South Korea, they refer to multinational buying groups to upgrade the quality and to enhance the competitiveness. And from here it comes that instead of exporting $2 billion of ready-made clothes, we can increase this figure into 30 billion. So you can imagine to how extent for each industry we can enhance our competitiveness if we address properly all the problems. And this is giving us a picture that Egypt is witnessing a very important turning point.
Yes.
That if we can succeed, hopefully, inshallah, in addressing these challenges, you know, we can achieve a very important, better result.
Absolutely. Dr. Yomn, another very positive thing, just as the Egyptian state helped and embarked on an economic reform program, they also embarked on a legislative, you know, investment legislation reforms, and the investment law has seen lots of changes to further enable and assist investors in Egypt. How do you see legislation related to investment as influencing investors?
Actually, legislation, is quite important, but still more important than legislation is, to our extent, you are applying this legislation on the ground properly. And this is what we need to emphasize on, because it's not a matter of legislation. You can find very good legislation, but the application is not quite good, and you are not enforcing rules of law in order to enhance the capability of the superiority of law. We witnessed during the last period several steps that have been taken in order to enhance the superiority of law, and we are much better than before. But still, we have challenges regarding, the superiority of law everywhere in Egypt. And I believe, besides that, we need, to address the accountability for those who are running business and for those from both sides, from businessmen and women and from the government, these are quite important to have a clear environment regarding who is doing what, regarding accountability, regarding the superiority of law. I believe these are significant, points that we have to emphasize on for enhancing the environment of investment.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Dr. Yomn, I want to ask you about a very important sector of the Egyptian economy, which are micro or small, medium, micro enterprises. What role do they play? How much push and drive do they have and influence do they have over the Egyptian economy?
This is my actually dilemma for more than 20 years nowadays. You know quite well, and this question is actually a question that every time, I am very sad to answer this question, because unfortunately we have a lot of capabilities for our small business, but still unexploited in a better way. Why? Because we don't have a maestro for all the activities. If you have, you have different parties that are working for SMEs, like we have, the responsibility according to the new law, but still every minister is having initiative to enhance, SMEs. And, from my experience in Shura Council and in different field studies in this matter, the problem here is about, the type of assistance coming from different ways to SMEs, because there are a lot, and every minister would like to take a part of such soft loans or whatever. You are going to find that each minister is going to have an initiative to support SMEs. When you try to seize on a macro level to how extent all these initiatives are, coordinated and directed to the benefit of beneficiaries, the real beneficiaries that are looking forward to start their new business, the results are not quite, well as it should be. And from here it comes that we have figures to, calculate this dilemma, which means that we have the participation of small industries in exports. You are going to find it minimal compared to...
So there's still absolutely room for them.
Yes.
So
this is proving to you that small business in Egypt are not participating quite well. Despite the size of the small business in Egypt, that they are, regarding the number, they are comprising more than 80%, but still their participation in GDP doesn't exceed 20-25. So These
Still,
figures can prove to you that
yes,
small business are not in the right direction.
still to move forward in that direction. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this segment. I'd like to thank you very, very much, Dr. Yomn Hamaki, Professor of Economics. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time and for joining us on this morning's edition of The Breakfast Show. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break, and we'll be right back for more. Do stay tuned.